Hello my friends, welcome to my another video. You might remember that this summer I scratch built this 1/100 scale T-72m2 Moderna. It was quite an annoying and tedious process, but the result is quite nice and I am really happy with it. So I decided, how about I do it in a much bigger scale. That's why I bought this 1/72 scale T-72b from modelcollect. The model itself is quite nice, filled with a lot of parts and some vinyl tracks. The lower hull is made out of steel to simulate weight of the tank. There are several types of wheels. We will be using the last row of them because that's the most accurate to the Moderna. Also, the shape of the turret is slightly different because this is a different variant of the T-72, so I sanded the cheeks off screen. Anyway, I start by snipping the parts of the sprues and building the base vehicle. The parts go together quite easily, but do have quite a bit of flesh on them. The upper front plate is done in such a way that I won't have to worry about scraping off anything to fit the ERA onto it. I glue all the parts with Revel Contacta glue. There are several versions of the T-72m2 Moderna. Some of them have side skirts, some of them have a protection cage on the side like a Russian MBT. I decided to go with the variant with side skirts just to save some of my sanity. I also decided to glue the vinyl tracks right away, just so I don't have to worry about them not being dry later when I will be fitting them onto the vehicle. I use super glue for them. After the base assembly, I decided to put on my pre-prepared ERA onto the turret. This is Dina's ERA. I made it by cutting 4 identical triangles, then gluing them together to create ERA, and then I sanded the edges because the ERA is kind of round if you look at pictures. I glued it onto the turret and then sanded it down a little bit just so it fits. Then I started working on the ERA on the hull. First I made a basic sketch, I would say. This is just pieces of styrene that don't actually represent the ERA. They are there just to give some height to the ERA and show me where I should put the ERA. Then I cut out rectangles in the size of the ERA and I cut them up to singular ERA blocks and glued them on. I also glued some details onto the turret, for example the hinges for the flaps that I have no idea what are for, but you can see them on the real vehicle, and also some rivets. This was made from stretched sprue. I also put some rivets on the upper front plate ERA. Then I started working on the turret. Now the turret has a weird basket shape around it. So I started by creating the reinforcements for the side panels. After that was done, I did some cages behind it, and then I started working on one of the boxes. First I cut the part out and then I dry fitted it. This is very important because I want it to fit perfectly. Then I used it to cut out an identical part that I will put from underneath, so there is not a hole there, and then I just glued it onto the model and created this box. By using this technique, I basically did the entire turret, hence that's why you won't see it in this video. some additional details, some smoke launchers later that I didn't record adding. And you can see here the additional details on the ERA. Now, some mistakes I did on the previous Tiny Moderna was not being all that accurate. You see, if you look at proper pictures of the T-72m2 Moderna, you can see that behind the back cage, on the back of the turret, there is a little box there, so I recreated that and then I started working on the cage. After that was done, I put the big box on the top that you can see on the Moderna, and I started working on the part that holds the 30mm cannon. This was more or less mirroring what I did on the other side, just a bit lower as it is lower on the real vehicle. Then I glued on the cannon support. This was made from 1 to 35th scale 50 cal from a Russian T-72. And after that, basically I mirrored everything, I added some more ERA and the model was done. Or well, not done, it was ready for painting. Since this model is in different colors because of different materials, I went in and primed it. I started painting the model with 3 basic colors: Russian uniform, white and flat brown. I mixed them together to create this kind of shade. White is for lightening, brown is just to make a more accurate Slovak green. Then I thinned it down, and in several thin coats I applied it across the model. I know it doesn't seem all that thin, but trust me, the water was basically running down the model when I turned it around. It was really thin, so I had to apply at least 5 layers. Then I painted the tracks. I went with a different approach. I always use Revell's German grey. This time I went with brown. After the brown was dry, I also went in with letter brown that I stippled on, and then I went over it with rusty wash. Then came the highlights after the model was dry. I used the dry brushing method. What I did was mix a really light green color. I put my dry brush into it, and then I cleaned it across my sheet of paper, and then I applied it across the entire model. You gotta be careful. As you can see, I broke the 30mm cannon. Then with German grey from Vallejo, I painted the side skirts. I really like this detail on T-72s. For some reason, I don't know, I enjoy how dark it is compared to the entire vehicle. I kind of painted some details I didn't want at this stage, but that's fine because then I dry brushed it again and the details were brought out. I also used the same color on the tire. Then I use some sponge chipping method. It's similar to dry brushing method. You just do it with a sponge, and then you stipple it across the parts that you want scratched, because I was making an operational vehicle. Then I went in with washes. I used Vallejo dark grey wash, and I applied it across all of the details. Then I blended it together with some water, as you could see in my previous videos. I made sure to put the wash on every detail to make them all visible. You can even see on this comparison how different the turret looks compared to the washed hull. Then came some rust washes. I applied them in similar manner, just on some parts that I wanted rusty, and then I just blended them in. Then I used highly diluted Vallejo buff color that I used for some dust effects. I didn't want my model to be muddy, but I wanted it to be dusty. So what I did was I highly diluted the color, then I applied it to places I thought would get most dusty, and then with a different brush, it was more or less damp, I spread it across the surface to create this dusty effect. As you can see, I layered this up just to look, you know, realistic and get the desired look I wanted. I even went in with some speckling at the end. I ended up applying this to the upper hull as well, mainly around the turret ring and in some crevices. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I sure did enjoy building this model. It was quite a tedious process again. I lost my sanity and wanted to leave it be, but I kept pushing forward and the model came out looking quite nice, I would say. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you are interested, go to my channel and look at my 1:100 scale Moderna. It's pretty similar, you will see it in the end pictures, but it's, you know, tinier. Anyway, thank you for watching again. If you feel like it, please subscribe or like my video. If you want to support me financially so I can make more amazing projects, please head on to my Patreon. This is the last video of this year. Next year I will try to be more productive and give you more and more models. Up until then, have Merry Christmas, my friends, and just have a great life. I will see you next year. Bye bye, and thank you for watching my video.